Hello and welcome to India First, your fortnightly program on strategic affairs, foreign affairs and defense. I am Nitin Gokhale. Prime Minister Modi had a meeting with President Xi Jinping of China on the sidelines of the G20 summit, and they seem to have spoken to each other frankly on subjects that concern both India and China, and especially India, which has expressed concerns over Chinese presence, increasing Chinese presence in the Balochistan province, the China-Pak economic corridor, and of course China's hard stance on not allowing India to get into the nuclear suppliers group. What does this meeting mean, and what has the Prime Minister's assertion meant to the Chinese, and what will be the fallout? To discuss all that, we have two very seasoned specialists with us. To my immediate left, Ambassador G. Prasar, old diplomat, seasoned diplomat, a very experienced diplomat on various matters, and of course Jaydev Ranade, China specialist and an old China hand again. Mr. Prasar, what do you make of this meeting that the Prime Minister had?
You know, I think Mr. Modi is bringing a transformational change to security implications of foreign policy. For 3 decades we have known that China has been supplying Pakistan designs of nuclear weapons, materials for nuclear weapons, missiles which can hit and destroy any city in India with nuclear weapons, then conventional weapons, whether it is tanks now into frigates and submarines. And we have kept quiet and said that Hindi chini bhai bhai.
Absolutely.
You know, it is a ridiculous situation.
Right.
For the first time you are having a Prime Minister saying, brother, this affects my security and I don't like it.
Right. And you are the one responsible.
And you are the one responsible. And I think 3 recent events have really triggered this.
Right.
The first is this One Belt, One Road project of theirs, which transits through the Shaksgam Valley, you know, in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, illegally ceded to China by Pakistan, which is our territory. Yes. So you are building a road on our territory. This is point number 1.
Yes.
Point number 2, the Pakistanis themselves, no less than General Javed Ashraf Qazi, Director General of the ISI, acknowledged that Jaish-e-Mohammed was responsible for the terrorist attack on our parliament.
That's true.
Now the Jaish-e-Mohammed attacks Pathankot,
yes,
and there both we and the Americans have enough wireless transcripts to know it is Jaish-e-Mohammed operating out of Bawalpur.
Right.
What do? They say, no, you cannot declare this a terrorist organization. Everybody else in the world wants to do it.
Correct.
Only China doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And the
NSG.
The third point is the NSG.
Yeah.
When we were admitted to and nuclear sanctions were removed against us, the whole China agreed to separate us from Pakistan.
True.
Because of the pressure put by President Bush.
Correct.
And everybody else agreed. Here there are just 2 countries, China and Turkey, out of 30 odd members who are objecting. Why is China objecting? When they agreed earlier that Pakistan cannot be equated with us for ending of global nuclear sanctions, why this? So I think what he's told him is that all this dosti bhai bhai is very nice, but what you're doing is treading on our toes and endangering our security.
Right.
Long overdue.
So in that sense, Mr. Ranade, you've just been to Vietnam, I'm told. The PM also went to Vietnam just before going to China. How does India play, if I can use that word, the card, Vietnam card or Southeast Asian nation cards against China? Should it play? And if it plays, how should it play?
Well, I think about playing the card, as you put it, is another issue. But I think the fact that Prime Minister Modi went to Hanoi before going to China is a message in itself, which reinforced, in fact, the manner in which he, as Ambassador Parthasarathi said, he has stopped dancing around the issue. And in Hangzhou, in his one-to-one meeting with Xi Jinping, he raised the issues point blank,
right,
which are of concern to us.
Correct.
Mind you, he has raised them this time again after the Chinese had indicated through various channels that the last time when he and Xi Jinping had a one-to-one, he should not have raised all these issues directly, etc.
And yet
so,
he did.
Yes, yet he did. He's undeterred. So I think that's important. The second is that by going to Vietnam, by talking about the various cooperative agreements, etc., and the prospects for economic cooperation between the two, he's indicated that India is open to doing business with all these countries, and that the disputes between them and China are really not of our consequence. They have to be sorted out by them.
Yes.
But that India will not allow its commercial prospects to be affected by this, to be blighted by all this.
Right.
So I think in a way, he has signaled to China that we will maintain our independence, as will the other countries, and our bilateral relations are our concern. In the same way that Beijing should now look at their relationship with our western neighbor Pakistan.
Right. But coming back to China-Pakistan nexus, Pakistan now almost resembles like one of the provinces of China, isn't it? In that sense that they're so dependent on China now that China is the only ally that they have.
Yes, as I said, Pakistan, if you take a study of what Pakistanis themselves are saying, they are at loggerheads with Afghanistan.
Right.
The Pashtuns whom they had trained have become Tehreek-e-Taliban, gone in and are now attacking Pakistan.
True.
Afghanistan refuses to recognize the Durand Line.
Absolutely.
They've had clashes with Iran, and Rahil Sharif insulted the Iranian president when he met him. The Iranians are very unhappy. Most important, within SAARC, Nitin, we now have a grouping of 3 countries,
Yes.
Bangladesh, Afghanistan and India, which if we choose, and I hope we do choose, we can corner Pakistan. Like we downgraded our representation at the meetings of home ministers and finance ministers.
Right.
The SAARC summit is coming, and I hope we carefully plan how the 3 of us will coordinate this.
Right.
Because the Bangladeshis are fed up.
Yeah.
You know, they've actually criticized the Bangladesh government for hanging that
Mir Qasim,
the Jamaat Islami leader, who was responsible for joining Pakistan army in butchery of Bangladeshis. So they are overplaying their heart, and the most important, which we don't seem to notice, is that that apart from the American angle, Saudi Arabia now finds it is worth cultivating India because they don't want us to be totally on the side of Iran. You see, so especially after the port project, so they are
the Chabahar
project. They are therefore keeping a close eye on.
In fact, the prince met the prime minister,
and the deputy crown prince, is the de facto leader of that country.
That's
because everyone who is there is over 80 and going into their 90s. He's the only young man who's guiding.
So that is. But what is? How does India? I mean, how should the world look at India's now this strategy of bringing up Balochistan, for instance?
Listen, I have for long been advocating this. You know it.
Exactly.
You see, more important, I don't think we should fight shy of saying this. Pakistan acquired Balochistan by fraud.
Right.
On 4th of August, 10 days before Pakistan's independence, 1947, Jinnah issued a statement saying that the Khan of Kalat, who was the ruler of Balochistan, is independent.
Correct.
And that an agreement will be signed. On the same day, an agreement was signed between the Khan of Kalat and the government of Pakistan, or the emerging government, co-signed by the British, in which Pakistan recognized the independence of the Khan of Kalat and Balochistan as an independent country to conduct its own foreign policies with friendly relations with all neighbors. So once they did that, it was taken over by fraud.
Right.
So I think we should support the Baluchis by saying not just human rights violations. Many in Delhi just talk about human rights violations. Why? Pakistani maps still show Hyderabad and Junagadh as part of Pakistan.
Exactly.
What is so
stopping you
sacrosanct?
from doing that?
Yeah, what is so sacrosanct?
As independent. If not
as independent? No, they are showing it as part of Pakistan. But the fact of the matter is, what is therefore independent? In you showing not just Balochistan, I would go a step further. The Durand Line is a border imposed on Afghanistan No Afghan accepted it.
Correct.
Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan was totally opposed to it. Surely we owe it to our freedom fighter to support what he said.
Yes, and show it on the maps, not show it on the map. The Durand line, don't show it.
Don't show it.
Don't show it. And show Balochistan as independent.
You need not show it as independent. You can keep it vague. But the fact of the matter is, why, when no Pashtun agrees this is the border, Badshah Khan wanted to be buried in Jalalabad and therefore never recognized this border. Even now, Pakistani Pashtun leaders are saying that it is that's not a border. Why? So I think we have pressure points to put on Pakistan for bad behavior. I am afraid this softly, dosti, fine. Maintain your lines of communication, talk, keep in contact with them, speak to them on terrorism or anything else you want. But put the pressure. They have not behaved well either on Junagadh or Hyderabad. They have misbehaved on Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir. What prevents you? You know, they call it the unfinished agenda of partition.
Yes,
we can also have an unfinished agenda of partition.
We'll do that. We'll take the discussion further. I need to take a small break and come back in a minute's time. Don't go anywhere.
पंजाब नेशनल बैंक की ओर से आप सभी को गणेश चतुर्थी की हार्दिक शुभकामनाएं।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना ने हम गांव वालों के लिए तरक्की के रास्ते खोल दिए।
सड़क के गड्ढों की फोटो खींच रहे हो? कोई खास बात है क्या? अरे काका, मेरे मोबाइल फोन में मेरी सड़क ऐप है, जिससे प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी जानकारी सरकार तक भेजी जा सकती है। सड़क से जुड़े सुझाव या शिकायत पर सरकार वाजिब कार्यवाही करती है।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी बात, मेरी सड़क एंड्रॉइड ऐप अब हर पल मेरे साथ।
उतार दे, छोड़ दो उसे, अभी तैयार नहीं हुआ वो। सुनीता, तुम्हारी बेटी की अभी काम करने की उम्र नहीं है।
क्यों दीदी? ये तो सारे काम कर लेती है।
बिल्कुल नहीं करेगी, न यहाँ न और कहीं। अभी बहुत छोटी है सुनीता, इसे तो स्कूल जाना चाहिए।
ये 12 साल की है, इसकी उम्र में तो मेरी शादी हो गई थी।
वो भी जुर्म था, और 14 साल से कम उम्र के बच्चों से काम करवाना भी कानूनन जुर्म है। तुम क्या मुझे जेल भिजवाओगी? कहीं आप तो ऐसा अपराध नहीं कर रहे?
These days, it's important to have an updated resume. Here's mine. Praful Kumar, Major Praful Kumar, Para Special Forces. 3 years served in a hostile zone. Tough assignment. Special service in J&K. Made some friends there. Combat free-fall specialist. Willing to shed blood. As you can see, I wear my heart on my sleeve and my resume on my uniform. Which other company lets you do that?
We are India's most exciting workplace, and we are making you an offer. The Indian Army. Live a life less ordinary.
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क योजना ने हम गांव वालों के लिए तरक्की के रास्ते खोल दिए।
सड़क के गड्ढों की फोटो खींच रहे हो? कोई खास बात है क्या? अरे काका, मेरे मोबाइल फोन में मेरी सड़क ऐप है, जिससे प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी जानकारी सरकार तक भेजी जा सकती है। सड़क से जुड़े सुझाव या शिकायत पर सरकार वाजिब कार्यवाही करती है।
प्रधानमंत्री ग्राम सड़क से जुड़ी कोई भी बात, मेरी सड़क एंड्रॉइड ऐप अब हर पल मेरे साथ।
बच्चों, जवाब ठीक से देना और सफाई के 10 नंबर होंगे।
चौंकिए मत, डेंगू और चिकुनगुनिया से बचने के लिए ये जरूरी है। आसपास पानी जमा न होने दें। ड्रम, कूलर, गमले को हर सप्ताह साफ करें। प्लास्टिक के कप व नारियल की खोल जैसी चीजों को इधर उधर न फेंकें, क्योंकि डेंगू और चिकुनगुनिया का मच्छर साफ पानी में पनपता है। मच्छरों के काटने से बचें। बुखार में पैरासिटामोल लें, एस्प्रिन हरगिज न लें।
इस बार तो बच्चों ने हमें ही पास कर दिया।
और सफाई के नंबर 100 में से 100।
हाँ।
खाद्य प्रसंस्करण मंत्रालय मेगा फूड पार्क्स बनाने के लिए प्रस्ताव आमंत्रित करता है। आवेदन की अंतिम तिथि 15 सितंबर 2016 है। अधिक जानकारी www.mofpi.nic.in पर।
बचपन से ही मुझे पता था I was a born leader, और इस बात का एहसास दिलाया मेरी पहली जॉब ने। वो सब सिखाया जो कोई और नौकरी नहीं सिखा सकती। मैन मैनेजमेंट, टाइम मैनेजमेंट, क्राइसिस मैनेजमेंट, सब कुछ। पहले ही दिन से मैं टीम को लीड कर रहा था, और जितने साल मैंने बिताए उससे कई ज्यादा एक्सपीरियंस मिला मुझे। और सबसे अच्छी बात, माय फर्स्ट जॉब मेड माय सेकंड करियर पॉसिबल।
हम है भारत के सबसे एक्साइटिंग वर्कप्लेस, और हम दे रहे हैं आपको एक ऑफर। भारतीय सेना, आम नहीं ये जिंदगी।
आप समझ क्यों नहीं रहे?
वो बहुत परेशान करते हैं मुझे, रैगिंग के नाम पे टॉर्चर करते हैं।
सीनियर्स रैगिंग नहीं करेंगे तो तुम स्मार्ट कैसे बनोगे? तुम्हारा कॉन्फिडेंस कैसे बढ़ेगा? बी ए मैन। आई एम सॉरी बेटा, आई एम रियली सॉरी।
आपके बच्चे की छोटी सी शिकायत किसी बड़ी मुसीबत का पैगाम हो सकती है, उसे नजरअंदाज ना करें। डोंट इग्नोर, टेक एक्शन।
Welcome back. You're watching India First, your fortnightly window to strategic affairs, defense and foreign policy. We are discussing the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the G20 summit, and of course what are the outcomes that one can be expected of, and the India-China relations. Ambassador Prasar, we were talking about Balochistan, of course, and how it is the key element as far as the China-Pakistan economic corridor is concerned. Since India has raised Balochistan, or the Prime Minister has raised Balochistan issue and has talked about Balochistan, there has been quite a chaos actually in the strategic circles in Pakistan as well as I'm sure in China. What do you think will be the impact on the corridor itself?
I think on the corridor, Jaidev is a much better knowledge and expert than I am. But I would just say one thing. Just remember the Chinese have two links.
Right.
I see the maritime Silk Route and the road link.
Right.
Both these links meet at the port of Gwadar. Gwadar is the greatest maritime threat that we are going to have for a long time. And I think the fact is the Baluchis hate the Chinese because of their links with the military.
Right.
I think that is what will be worrying the Chinese, because even their engineers have been killed, but I'm sure Jaidev would have.
What do you think? Because we have gone and tried to start constructing the port, or at least upgrading the port of Chabahar. How will this play out? How will the Chinese look at India raising Balochistan, and maybe the Balochistan insecurity that presents itself? Will the Chinese have to then get in more security of themselves, by themselves? What is your view?
Well, I think the manner in which the Chinese went about the China-Pakistan economic corridor, they in fact tried to change the regional dynamics and the state of play in their favor. I don't think that they expected us to come out with a counter, which this move on Balochistan is. In fact, it not only does it sort of make us take a forward step, a positive step, but it puts into jeopardy the China-Pakistan economic corridor through proxy, which is the Baluchi people. And by encouraging them, we have actually put the entire China-Pakistan economic corridor under threat. Having said that, I'd also say that the Chinese have been trying to, in fact, through this corridor, they're trying to really colonize Pakistan, because everything, Pakistan's energy, economy, defense, is subject to Chinese investment, which will, I anticipate, get regulated over time as things become difficult. The other issue is what you said about Chabahar, and that fits in with what Ambassador Pathasati spoke about Gwadar. Gwadar is a pivot, it's a linchpin for the Chinese military as well as for the Chinese Navy. And don't forget that the nuclear submarine which surfaced in Karachi were the first in any nuclear submarine, Chinese nuclear submarine in this area. Chabahar, they were watching with great interest the fact that we did send a shipment via Chabahar up to Afghanistan. And the Chinese did take note of it, obviously, that here is an alternative route that India has developed and a pressure point on China, on Pakistan itself. So I think the entire situation is now a bit fluid. But here I will just make one point, if I may, which is the statement by Hafiz Saeed of Jamaat-ud-Dawa at the end of May, where he told the Pakistani government, and I'm quoting him, to show some guts and tell the Chinese, you know, that they shouldn't misbehave with the Muslim people. And after that, the Pakistani religious delegation, etc., went. But that's a sign, not that whether the Chinese are misbehaving or not, but that here you have a leader of an Islamic extremist front or terrorist front who is actually telling the Pakistani government how to conduct its relationship with China. I think this is the beginning of maybe a very dangerous decline for the Chinese in their relationship with Pakistan.
And perhaps that is one of the reasons that they are reacting to every small little step India is taking in its own territory
Yes.
for beefing up security along the India-China frontier. For instance, the BrahMos deployment news, the moment in Arunachal Pradesh that India is going to deploy BrahMos missiles came out, they reacted quite vehemently.
Yes, in fact, here I must share with you that couple of Chinese did speak to me about this BrahMos missile and expressed surprise that we were doing it. And I said, we've had, your missiles pointed at us for a long, long time. And these are short-range missiles. They're under 300 kilometers.
Right.
So, there's no threat to anyone. It's a defensive maneuver. But yes, the BrahMos missile has rattled them. Particularly the play in the newspapers that these have been specially designed for high mountain warfare.
Right.
I think that has got them worried.
That's what. What do you think? China wants to keep engaged with India because their economic market, one of the bigger markets is also India, and their domestic consumption is not increasing. So they do not want to have a complete break. But if you look at this last 6 months or so, is this phase between India and China relationship in the relationship has been one of the lower phases, lowest phases?
I think you should look at the larger Chinese economy. They have built up surplus capacities, huge surplus capacities, especially in construction.
Right.
So any construction contract abroad is beneficial to them economically,
right,
because they are dumping their surpluses and getting repaid for it.
Right.
They can always offer so-called concessional terms. So one is it's a part of their surpluses. Secondly, I think where it suits us, certainly we should continue to have economic cooperation with China in non-strategic areas. But even if you see communications, Huawei has a large setup in Bangalore. And in fact, when I was driving once from Ankleshwar to Vadodara, there are a large number of Chinese industries along the way.
Absolutely.
So it's
So
business is business.
So business is okay, but that shouldn't deter us from making our point all the time.
Absolutely, that shouldn't make it clear, prevent us from making it clear that if you compromise and endanger our security,
right,
we will not forever be sitting with folded hands.
Sure. And I think, is that the change that you notice? Because when I speak to some of these people in Southeast Asia and elsewhere, they all say that they see a new assertive India. And thanks to Prime Minister Modi, I think, who keeps making these statements irrespective of what the Chinese say. Just quickly, before we end the program.
Yeah, I would say two things here. One is that China has become more open and more assertive in its postures against us and siding with Pakistan. I think that's a new development which we need to take note, which has contributed to a slide down in our relationship. The second is whether Mr. Modi's comments are considered assertive or not is a different matter. Actually, what he's doing is he's laying down the line as far as India's strategic interests are concerned. Assertive would be if he takes a further step. So, but the world has got used to, I think, India as Ambassador Prasar sitting with folded hands. That we have, it's being viewed like this. But, just one last point, that it has also put Xi Jinping in a bit of a spot, because he's tried to project himself as a strong man. He cannot afford to appear weak with the party congress coming up next year. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic, but the Chinese are quite clear that the relationship is actually under stress.
Right. So on that point, that the relationship between India and China is not all hunky-dory, and it is perhaps one of the lowest phases in recent times. But that notwithstanding, I think the lines of communication between the two nations are open at the highest level, as demonstrated by Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of G20 summit. Hopefully, this will lead to a further dialogue and more transparency and some positive steps. What those steps will be, we'll have to wait and watch. But until then, goodbye from us. Thank you very much, both my guests here, who gave us such rare insights into what goes on in international diplomacy and what should go on. Until the next fortnight, goodbye.